So, which one do you think is more resilient? A rubber ball that bounces back every time, or a glass that, if dropped, will likely shatter? That's a no brainer, right? Here's what most people get wrong about resilience: they think it's about being tough, unbreakable, like steel. But real resilience isn't about being hard, it's about being flexible, adaptive, able to absorb impact and bounce back. The Stoics understood this 2,000 years ago, and modern psychology, neuroscience, and personal development research have proven them right. I'm Lourdes Slafer, a life coach, mindfulness teacher, and passionate about helping people unlock their potential and cultivate confidence and calm.
I'm Maria Savio. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist and life coach, and I help people transform their lives fast by combining ancient wisdom with modern psychology. And here's what we've discovered in our work with our clients. Most people, they aren't the they aren't the ones who never fall. They're the ones who've mastered the art of getting back up. And today we're going to show you exactly how to build that kind of resilience using Stoic philosophy, mindfulness practices, and proven personal development strategies. Because here's the truth: life is going to knock you down. The question isn't if, it's how fast can you get back up?
Yeah, before we talk about how to build resilience, let's get on the same page about what it actually is. Here's what resilience isn't: it's never experiencing stress or hardship, being emotionally numb or detached, pretending everything is fine when it's not, toughing it out alone without support. And here's what resilience is: it's the ability to adapt to adversity and recover quickly, maintaining your sense of purpose even when things fall apart, learning and growing from challenges instead of being broken by them, and staying flexible in your thinking and responses. In personal development, we talk about resilience as a skill that you build, not a trait you're born with. It's like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
And then mindfulness. Mindfulness teaches us that resilience starts with awareness, noticing your thoughts and emotions without being controlled by them. And the Stoics built an entire philosophy around resilience. They called it amor fati, which is love of fate. Not just accepting what happens, but really embracing it as necessary for your growth. And Marcus Aurelius, who was the Roman emperor, and he wrote Meditations. While he was leading his armies, he wrote daily in his meditations, and he, went through brutal wars and deadly plagues. His empire was basically falling apart, and also his children were dying. And he wrote in his book, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." And that's not toxic positivity, that's actual radical resilience. And think about the most resilient person the not the person who had the easiest life, the person who's been through hell and came out stronger. What do they have in common? They don't avoid challenges, they transform them. So, how do you build that?
The Stoics identified five core practices that build unshakable resilience, and modern psychology has validated every single one. So let's begin with the first pillar: the dichotomy of control. Epictetus taught some things are within our control and some things are not. What you can control: your thoughts, your responses, your effort, your values, your character. What you cannot control: other people's opinions, the past, the future, outcomes, external events. And here's what happens when you focus on what you can't control: anxiety, frustration, helplessness, burnout. That's what you'll experience. And here's what happens when you focus on what you can control: empowerment, clarity, peace, resilience. That's what you'll experience. When you feel overwhelmed, pause. Take 3 deep breaths and ask yourself, what part of this is actually within my control? And then put 100% of your energy there.
Yeah, I worked with a client who she was devastated because her company lost a major contract, and she had spent weeks replaying the pitch, obsessing over what went wrong and blaming herself. So in our session, I asked her a couple of questions. Can you change what happened? Obviously, no. Can you control whether they come back? No, again. So, what is it that you can control? And she, gave it some thought, and she realized she could control what she learned from it, how she approached the new sales consultations, how she supported her team, and her attitude moving forward. And once she had this clarity and this realization, things began to shift for her. They changed, and a few months later, she closed an even bigger deal because she had stopped wasting energy on what she couldn't control, and she focused everything on what she could control. So your practice would be to make 2 lists now: what you're worried about that you can control and what you can't control. Then commit to releasing the second list. Believe me, this will not only release your anxiety, but it'll allow you to focus and then take action on the things that you can control.
Yeah, and that is such a powerful practice because we waste so much time and energy
Mhm.
focused on the things that we can't control. So here's pillar number 2, negative visualization, premeditatio malorum. The Stoics practice imagining worst case scenarios, not to be pessimistic, but to be prepared. And I know what you're thinking. Isn't that just anxiety provoking? Well, no. Anxiety is uncontrolled worry about things that might happen. Negative visualization is different in that it's intentionally mentally rehearsing so that you're ready if they do happen. Elite athletes do this, Navy SEALs do this. Top performers in every field do this. They visualize challenges before they happen so that they're not caught off guard, right? They have a contingency plan. And the key is doing this from a calm, grounded state, not from panic. You're training your brain to see obstacles as manageable, not catastrophic. Seneca wrote, set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, that it may be a test and not a mere hobby. He practiced poverty so he wouldn't fear it. Now, you don't have to practice poverty, but you can practice resilience.
Let me give you a few examples because this will transform it for you. Before a difficult conversation, visualize it going badly and how you'll respond with grace and clarity. And before a big presentation, imagine that you have technical failures and then how you'd adapt to it. And then before a major life change, imagine the challenges and how you'll handle them. When when things go wrong, and they will, then you're not blindsided. You're prepared. You bounce back faster and you pivot into action with grace. So, take a look. What's one challenge you're facing right now? Close your eyes for 10 seconds. Imagine it getting worse. Now, imagine yourself handling it calmly and effectively. That's negative visualization. That's building resilience in real time. Now, let's move on to pillar number 3. Imagine 2 columns. One is all of the obstacles, and the other is the opportunity. And Marcus Aurelius wrote, our actions may be impeded, but there can be no impeding our intentions or dispositions because we can accommodate and adapt. So, resilient people don't see obstacles as stop signs, they see them as redirections. And mindfulness itself teaches you to observe your thoughts without believing them. And Stoicism teaches you to change your thoughts to serve you better. So when something bad happens, ask yourself three questions. What can I learn from this? Because every failure has feedback and every setback is a lesson. And then, what strength is this building in me? Is it building patience? Is it building courage? Is it building adaptability? Or maybe even humility? And then the third question, how might this be protecting or redirecting me? Because, maybe the job you didn't get would have been miserable. Maybe the relationship that ended, maybe it was toxic. Or maybe the setback is setting you up for something better.
Yeah, I worked with a woman a while back who was laid off from her job. She had been with the company for about 15 years, and she was really devastated, and she felt like a failure. She completely lost her identity because it was so wrapped up in the work and in this company. So, we worked with this reframing, and in the session, I asked her, "Well, what if this layoff is the best thing that ever happened to you?" Of course, she looked at me like I was crazy, but as we continued the conversation, she, came to realize that, and started listing, what she had been tolerating: a toxic boss, someone who was constantly undermining her, no growth opportunities, work that was draining her, no time for family. And so she started to come around to the idea of, this might be a good thing. 6 months later, she found a new position, and she found herself using talents that had been untapped in her previous position. And she had a boss who was truly a leader and mentor. And she was making more money, working fewer hours, and doing work that she actually loves. The layoff didn't break her, it freed her, but only because she was willing to reframe it. And so here's a practice that you might try at home. Think of one current challenge and complete this sentence: this is challenging, and it's teaching me, fill in the blank. Investigate, look for what it might be teaching you. Let's move on to pillar number 4: voluntary discomfort. The Stoics intentionally practice discomfort to build resilience reserves. And, this is part of why people do cold plunges, maybe fasting, hard workouts, and public speaking challenges. It's not because they enjoy suffering, but because they're training their nervous system to handle stress. Mindfulness meditation is a form of voluntary discomfort. You sit still when your body wants to move. You stay present when your mind tends to wander and, want to escape. Neuroscience shows that when you voluntarily expose yourself to manageable stress, you increase your stress tolerance. Your nervous system learns, I can handle this.
Let's give you a few examples. Okay. So Seneca, he used to sleep on the hard floor periodically. And Marcus Aurelius, he used to practice saying no to some of the luxuries. Remember, he was the Roman Empire, so he had everything. But Epictetus, he taught his students to embrace hardship as training, similar to maybe somebody like David Goggins, who, he does a ton of endurance trainings. So we don't have to do any of those things, but we could practice maybe taking cold showers or do hard physical challenges or have difficult conversations that we've been avoiding. Maybe we practice saying no to comfort when it's making us soft, or we could practice being uncomfortable in small ways every day. When real adversity hits, and it will, you'll have resilience reserves to actually draw from. And if you think of resilience like a bank account, every time you voluntarily do something really hard, you're making kind of like a deposit. And when life forces hardship on you, you can make a withdrawal. So most people, they wait until the account is actually empty, and you don't want to be most people. So this week, start practicing. Practice this week to choose one voluntary discomfort, something that scares you just a little bit, and just do it. You can also start building your reserves this way. Now, let me take you into pillar number 5, Memento mori. The Stoics meditated daily on their mortality, and they they did it not to be morbid, to be actually really present, and to also practice gratitude. When you remember that your time is limited, you stop wasting it on things that really don't matter. And you become more resilient because you stop sweating the small stuff. So mindfulness is about being present. Memento mori is about remembering why being present actually matters, because this moment is really all you have. And Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think."
Yeah. And, this isn't depressing, it's liberating. When you remember you're going to die, you stop caring so much about what other people think of you, minor inconveniences, petty conflicts, and perfect outcomes. Resilient people have perspective. They know what actually matters. They don't fall apart over things that won't matter in 5 years. So join me in this practice. Close your eyes and imagine that you're 90 years old and you're looking back on your life. What do you want to have mattered? What challenges do you want to have faced with courage? And now open your eyes, and that can be your North Star. That's what resilience is for. Not for just surviving, but for living fully. You, your practice. Every morning, remind yourself, I have limited time. How do I want to show up today? So you can take the resilience routine. So say you're thinking, oh, this is great philosophy, but how how do I actually build resilience day to day? Here's your integrated daily practice, combining stoicism, mindfulness, and personal development. A morning routine that will take you about 10 minutes. Start with mindful grounding. Sit quietly, focus on your breath intentionally. Ground yourself in the present moment before the day pulls you in 10 different directions. And then practice the dichotomy of control. Do a check in and write down what's within my control today and what's not. Where will I focus my energy? Next, do a negative visualization. Imagine one challenge you might face today and mentally rehearse handling it with your best self. And then remember Memento mori. Ask, if today were my last day, how would I want to show up? And then finally, intention setting. Choose one resilience quality to embody today: patience, courage, flexibility, grace under pressure. Try it out.
So throughout the day, when adversity hits, well, pause, take 3 conscious breaths, assess what's going on, what's in my control, what's not in my control. And then do the reframe. What can I learn? What strength is this building? And then you'll be able to respond and act from your values, not your emotions. If you also practice voluntary discomfort, you can do one hard thing, have the difficult conversation, take the cold shower, face the fear, build your resilience reserves. And in the evening, take another 10 minutes and do a review of your resilience. Take the resilience reflection and ask yourself the three questions. What challenge did I face today? How did I respond? What would I do differently? And as a bonus, what did I learn about my resilience? And then the gratitude and growth, you can write down one thing I'm grateful for. And then one way I grew stronger today. And then the mindful release, just deep breaths. Let go of what you can't control. Trust yourself for tomorrow. And that it takes a total of 20 minutes, 10 in the morning and 10 in the evening, plus that mindful response, those mindful responses throughout the day. If you do this for 21 days, you'll start to notice that you recover faster from the setbacks. You the small things, they stop derailing you, and you feel more grounded and you feel more centered. You begin to trust yourself to handle whatever comes, and you actually grow from the challenges instead of just surviving them. And that's real resilience, not avoiding hard things but transforming through them.
Mm. So here's why this works. It's not just philosophical, it's neurological and psychological. Every time you practice reframing, you're literally rewiring your brain. You're weakening the neural pathways for catastrophic thinking and strengthening the pathways for adaptive thinking. Research shows that exposure to manageable stress, that voluntary discomfort, increases your stress tolerance. It's like a vaccine for adversity. Psychologist Julian Rotter found that people with an internal locus of control, believing that they control their responses, are significantly more resilient than those with an external locus of control. And studies show that the ability to reframe situations is one of the strongest predictors of resilience. People who can find multiple perspectives bounce back faster. Research from Harvard and MIT shows that mindfulness practice strengthens the prefrontal cortex, the rational brain, and calms the amygdala, the fear center. That's the biological foundation of resilience. The Stoics didn't have brain scans, but they understood this human psychology deeply, and now science proves they were right.
So let's take a little look at real resilience, what that looks like. For example, Simone Biles, she's the most decorated American gymnast, and she faced intense pressure, and she famously, everybody knows, withdrew from her events because she prioritized her mental health. And by stepping away, she actually exercised control over her internal well-being and judgment in a moment of external crises and immense public scrutiny, demonstrating that she had a practical application of the dichotomy of control by choosing to guard her mind above everything else. And you've probably heard of Nelson Mandela in South Africa, the anti-apartheid revolutionary who spent 27 years in prison, much of it in really harsh conditions on Robben Island. But his commitment to forgiveness, discipline, and patience during his long confinement demonstrates that extraordinary self mastery and a focus on his character and purpose, all of these core Stoic virtues, despite circumstances entirely outside of his control. And if you've read A Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl, he survived Auschwitz. He lost his entire family. He witnessed unimaginable horrors. And still, he wrote, everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. So remember, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that truly matters. The executive who lost everything in a divorce and then built a better life, the parent who maybe lost a child and found purpose helping others grieving with their families. Also, the entrepreneur who, has failed a zillion times and he finally built a thriving business. They didn't avoid the pain. They didn't pretend it didn't hurt. They didn't bounce back overnight, but they practiced resilience. They focused on what they could control. And then they reframed their pain into purpose. And they chose to grow instead of to break. And you have the same capacity. You have the same choice.
Yes, absolutely. We all have that same capacity and that same choice. Seneca wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a person perfected without trials." Your challenges aren't punishments, they're invitations to become who you're meant to be. They're opportunities for growth and development. So the question is, will you accept the invitation? You know, remember, you can be like a glass, rigid, fragile, shattered by impact, or you can be flexible, adaptive, bouncing back stronger. The Stoics chose resilience. Modern psychology validates their choice. Personal development gives you the tools. Here's your 21-day resilience challenge. In the morning, take 10 minutes for mindful grounding, a control check in, negative visualization, memento mori, and setting your intentions. And then throughout the day, when adversity hits, pause, assess, reframe, and respond. And practice engaging in one voluntary discomfort. And then in the evening, take 10 minutes to do a resilience reflection, practice gratitude, growth, and mindful release. Do this for 21 days, and you'll build unshakable resilience. You'll face challenges with confidence instead of fear. You'll recover from setbacks in days, not months. You'll grow through adversity instead of being broken by it. And you'll trust yourself to handle whatever life presents you with.
Absolutely. Marcus Aurelius wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. And we all know life will test you. That's guaranteed. But resilience, that's your choice. So choose wisely and choose daily and choose now. And you can also choose our book, A Path to Resilience, Small Steps to an Unshakable You. It blends mindfulness, the concept of positive psychology, and stoicism, just like we just did in this conversation. It's a year-long companion that imparts daily wisdom based on the values of wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline. And it's now available on Barnes and Nobles, on Amazon, and other online vendors.
Thanks so much for being here. We're walking this path right alongside you. Take care of your heart, take care of your mind, take care of yourself. Support our work by liking, following, subscribing, and sharing this with someone who needs a reminder that they're stronger than they think they are. We'll see you next time.